This is the way you gotta live your life. Pick up the book and understand it to survive, and analyze your problems without being blind.
Welcome to Defend Your Podcast. Today, as always, we have Julian, and we have a very special guest from Poland, Ania.
Wow, you pronounced that correctly. Shout out to Ryan Henry for pronouncing a name correctly in a different language.
Julian, and another shout out to Julian. Another name I pronounced right, just no one will give me credit for it. So what do we got for the interview today, Julian?
Well, we have a very good friend of mine, Ania, who I actually met in Ecuador, believe it or not. That's how we met. But I'll let her introduce herself to the people out there. Ania, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, guys. So, like you said, my name is Ania, and that's all. I'm a student in Poland, and I'm just ending my last semester.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What are you studying?
Kind of animal breeding. This stuff with animals.
Which would explain your internship in Ecuador, where you were working with wildlife in Ecuador.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We were very excited to have you this week. So I guess we could kind of jump right into it. We've been hearing a lot about Poland's been in the national news and international news everywhere, but I don't think people quite understand what's happening. So there's been mass demonstrations happening all around Poland. Can you talk a little bit, Ania, as a student? What are the protests about in Poland and what is happening?
Yeah, so the protest started on 22nd of October after the Constitutional Court announced the ruling on abortion. And the court ruled that the termination of pregnancy when there is a high probability of a serious and irreversible impairment of the fetus, or if an incurable disease is endangering its life, is unconstitutional. And this means in Poland it will only be possible to have an abortion in two cases: when the life of the mother is at risk and when the conception is due to a criminal act such as rape. This situation forced Polish women to take out to the streets despite the pandemic, because the government wants to take our rights away from us, and we just don't agree to that. The abortion law in Poland was one of the strictest in any case, and the government decided just like that to make our law even stricter, and that's awful. So that's why I'm very proud that we've managed to unite. During Friday's protest, there were over 150,000 people in Warsaw, but the most important thing is that the protests take place not only in big cities, but also in small towns. Every day I look through dozens of stories on Instagram and Facebook, and I think it's amazing because the protests take place not only in Poland, but all over the world. And it shows how much Poles do not agree with the decision on abortion, and that we have great support outside the country, that we are not alone.
You can tell that Polish people are very united. Like, these demonstrations are so large.
Yes.
And I think that was surprising about how large these demonstrations are. So you talked about what the protests are about. So what are the protesters' demands, and how has the government responded to those demands?
So at the beginning, we wanted to return to the 1993 abortion compromise, just to withdraw from the decision of 22nd of October. At the time, I think no one expected the protests to take place on such a large scale. A lot of people got involved in the women's strike, also men. At present, the demands do not only concern abortion, but also other areas. The women's strike demands, among other things, like assistance for the disabled, reliable sex education, a Polish one in which human rights are for everyone, including ethnic and religious minorities or LGBT plus community who are prosecuted in my country. I think there is no clear government decision on the demands of women's strike. In turn, there were reactions to the protests, such as, for example, the speech of chairman of the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczyński. In his speech, instead of trying to alleviate the situation, this politician called for the defense of the churches at all costs, giving his permission and thus provoking people from extreme right wing to behave aggressively against protesters. Jarosław Kaczyński's statement was received very negatively and interpreted by many people as if it was a declaration of war on Polish women. After his speech, the number of attacks on protesters increased, and I felt it on my own skin because I took part in a protest in Poznan, and we went near to the cathedral on Ostrów Tumski. It turned out that about 100 people were already waiting for us there to defend the church, the cathedral, and we were attacked by them. And in the few seconds, thousands of people started to run away. I remember that it was like slow motion for me. They attacking us from a lot of sides, and I was running away with my sister. And one girl was severely beaten. And such situations have occurred in many other cities in Poland, not only in Poznan. So, yeah, that was the reaction to our peaceful strike from the government. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, Jesus.
Do you think this could be like pent up or built up energy from, I'm not sure how your lockdown is going on in Poland, but like for here in America, a big thing with all these protests that came out in early March or really hit the ceiling in April, I feel, is, you know, people were locked up in their own house for a month. So do you think like either, both sides got a lot of energy because of just getting out and doing something?
Yeah, maybe, but
Because this was just demonstration since you were pretty much chasing out the communists, right? In the 80s. It's the biggest demonstration in Poland.
Yes, that's true. That's right. But it's like in Poland, the situation is wrong for a long time, and I think that a lot of people just starting to seeing this and they trying to do something. And this abortion decision was like a spark, you know, to go to the streets.
It's been, I think Poland's always been known as having a lot more restrictive laws when it comes to abortion historically. And you mentioned the church. Poland's been, I think it's over 95% of its population is Catholic. And there seems to be this disconnect maybe between the younger generation, who's, let's say, more progressive, and the older generation that is much more in line with the Catholic way of thinking. How involved is the Catholic Church with the Polish government? Like how connected are those two things?
Okay, so unfortunately, in Poland, there is no clear separation of government and the church. That is why the protesters at the beginning of the march went to the churches. Many Polish priests become involved in politics. For example,
Really?
Yeah, for example, during the elections, there were sermons directly calling for voting for a specific party. So
Really? Wow. I did not know that.
yeah, it was like that. And in addition, grants were awarded for various investments for church. And the Polish church and the government joined forces in they called it like a fight against LGBT plus ideology, like they call them. And together they tried and still trying to convince the Polish society that these people are not normal and that they are our enemies. As far as protests are concerned, after the announcement of the Constitutional Court's ruling, strikers who, for example, entered churches with banners or scattered leaflets with the slogans of Women's Strike were attacked by far-right groups and accused by the state propaganda media of profaning the churches. There was even a situation where a priest went out to the peaceful women and with the hunting whip and started threatening them. Fortunately, he was arrested by the police and no one has been armed. In addition, students attending to Catholic schools who have taken part in the protests have unjustified lesson hours and receive remarks and are given lower grades for their behavior. The headmaster of a certain institution went further, and in his message to the students, he called the protesters the people promoting the killing of children and compared the sign of red lightning to a Nazi symbol. I don't know why. It's like completely false and unfair. And these things are promoted by government television and some members of Law and Justice Party to arouse aversion and negative association with the women's strike and people. And there's one good thing, in my opinion. On Friday, there was kind of appeal of ordinary priests, and priests say to stop using religion for political purposes and starting apologize for the sins of the church. Firstly, it was 27 priests, and yesterday when I checked the news, I saw like kinda 100 priests signed this.
100 priests. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I hope that this appeal will change the public perception of the protests and start stimulate thinking about separation of church and religion from the politics. Even in the church, there are different opinions about the situation in Poland.
It's kind of ironic because the Pope, what was it, like 3 weeks ago, said that same-sex civil unions is a good thing. And so you were mentioning like LGBTQ rights and things of that nature. And the Pope literally just said he's considered a much more progressive Pope.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic that the church in Poland maybe is a little bit back on, maybe not all of the churches in Poland, but a lot of churches.
Do you think it's a realistic expectation to, like, let's say in a decade or two, that there will be a separation of church and state?
I hope so, but I'm not sure. It depends on people and what they decide. It's many of us is not agree to the church in politics, and it is normal. It shouldn't be like that, and I hope that we will do something about this. That something will be changed.
Well, first step is getting your voice heard. I feel like you guys are doing what you can.
Absolutely. I mean, as Ryan is saying, I mean, these protests, they haven't been so large for quite a while. Those nonviolent protests work. I mean, it's worked in the States, it's worked in many other places. But you touched on something, Ania, about the church and the state. From the outside, it looks like everybody's participating. But what is the perception in Poland? Is it like the majority of people feel this way? Or is it kind of like 50-50 that people are half on the church and half with the peaceful protesters? Or is it,
It's hard to say. It's a lot of Catholic people in Poland, but when I was on protest in Poznań, there were also Catholic girls to protesters. So there is a lot of Catholics who wants to fight for our freedom. It's not like I forgot the word. Julian, obojętne.
Obojętne, like either way. Nie wiem. Obojętne. Ryan, what's obojętne in English?
Very cool.
No.
No.
Oh, maybe like this.
Learn so many languages, you forgot your first one.
Yeah.
For many Catholics, it does matter to have our freedom, even about such case like abortion.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. You talked a lot about what the protests are about, and you mentioned a little bit about the change in law. So how strict were those abortion laws before this ruling compared to now? Like, was there a big difference? Like, or was this like such a big change that it really sparked this movement?
Okay, so since 1993, legal abortion could be performed in Poland in 3 cases: when pregnancy is life-threatening, when the prenatal tests or other medical reasons indicate a high probability of a serious and irreversible impairment of the fetus, or an incurable disease is threatening its life, and also when there's a reasonable suspicion that the pregnancy was caused by a forbidden act, for example, incest or rape. And in cases first and second, the termination of pregnancy is carried out by a doctor in the hospital, and it is possible until the fetus is able to live independently outside the body of the pregnant woman. In third case, the occurrence of circumstance that enables an abortion must first be confirmed by the prosecutor, and abortion is possible if less than 12 weeks have passed since the beginning of the pregnancy.
Mm.
On 22nd of October 2020, the judges of Constitutional Court ruled that the provisions allowing for termination of pregnancy in the case of serious defects of the fetus and are unconstitutional. And this is really terrible thing, because due to serious defects of the fetus, most abortions were performed in Poland, and only in last year it was 1074 of 1110 procedures. It was like the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So going back, you said for the third case, if you can get it terminated if it came through incest or rape, and it's got to be confirmed by a prosecutor. How quickly do your court systems work? Because it takes forever to get anything done in our courts here. You're looking at like 2 years if you're going to court.
Actually, I don't know. Sorry. It's not like I.
Stay in there that long.
Yeah, I think it can take a long time. So if the fetus have to be before
Right.
12 weeks, so I don't know how long it takes. So
I think that's the point Ryan's trying to make, is like, to go through that process in court to get permission
yeah,
from the court, like, that's a very lengthy process in any country.
yeah,
So it just seems like it's a way to say, oh no, I'm giving you this right, but really I'm not, because
yeah.
I'm going to
That's
make it very hard to even,
Right. I
you
can
know.
only imagine how biased those courts can be against abortion if they're already trying to make the laws strict.
In the States, I think people will really identify with the women's protests happening in Poland, because in some parts of the states, abortion laws are as restrictive as it is in Poland, especially in the South. So I think a
Worse.
lot, maybe worse even, yeah. And so I think, yeah. So I think there's a lot of women looking to Poland that are definitely probably inspired. But of course, this isn't just like, men need to participate as well. And the question I have is, how can men be better allies for women's rights and the right to choose? Because there's definitely disparity between that. And how can men be better allies for women in the right to choose?
So, in my opinion, the most important thing is for men to show support, is to being with us. As you can see, many men participate in the women's strike, to showing that they are our allies and they will fight at our side. For me, men who want to support us should strongly oppose discrimination against women, react when they see or hear about harassment or bullying. If they witness a situation in which a woman is offended, they should support her, take her side, and not try to unjustify such chauvinistic behavior. A man who is a woman's ally, above all, should treat her as an equal. And in Poland, a few days ago, there was quite a lot of talk about the men's hell action. The very name of the men's hell is drawn from a women's strike, and in my opinion, is intended to divert attention from the protests that are now taking place in Poland. And men's hell is a group of guys whose right out completely unthinking demands. An example is that they want to have a written legal abortion until the 12th week of the fetus life. It simply means that they can sign a waiver of paternity until the fetus is 12 weeks old. And they want it because, like they said, if a woman can decide that she doesn't want to be a mother, then a man should also be able to say that he doesn't want to be a father. And then if a woman doesn't want to raise the child by herself, she can remove it just like that, because it's that simple. It's one of the biggest foolish things I've read lately, and there were a lot of them. So men should be allies with women, not behave like that. So gentlemen, if we receive support from you, we will repay you with the same.
Yeah, I did it again. I had a question and there it went. Right out.
It happens all the time.
So, I apologize if I got this wrong. So, you're saying in the first 12 weeks, 3 months, right? My math's right.
Probably wrong.
Yeah, probably. I failed math. I didn't eat it. So you're saying in the first 3 months, is that what you guys are pushing for, or is that what the law is, that men can sign a waiver? I never heard that, and that's actually an interesting take, because that's one of my back and forths about abortion is, like, you have to come to terms on, like, I agree it's your body, your choice to a very far extent. Like, part of me, like, at a certain point, I do believe it is a life, but let science decide that, not your religion. I think that makes it simple enough. I could be wrong. But back to the original question, is that an actual thing or something you're pushing for?
It's not a legal thing. It's something like a group of men posted on the Facebook group, like men's hell, and they trying to. I don't know what they're trying to do. It's like really stupid idea, because it's not for women. It's not like we just do abortion and it's fine. It's really hard for a lot of women to make the decision, and there's a lot of thing about abortion, and if men compare it to sign some paper, and he does like, oh, it's the same. It's not. It's not the same. It's completely different thing to write a paper and have a procedure. Like, it's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
not legal. It's just something like I saw on Facebook, and there was a lot of discussion about it in the last few days. So it was really loud about this, and that's why I mentioned that, because not all of men trying to support us. Some of them doing things like that. So, and it's terrible. I think it's really awful.
Right. Well, and I think, Anya, that I'm definitely guilty of this too, where there's a big disconnect where men don't quite understand like what that right means for women, the right to choose, and everything that entails, right? Like we don't get, like we've never had birth, we don't understand that process. We don't understand like what your bodies go through during pregnancy or at conception. Like we just don't understand at all what that means, both in the health, both in health, emotionally, physically, all those things we just do not get. So that's why men are able to like compare a piece of paper to like going through a procedure because they just don't, like we just don't get it, you know? And I guess the question I'm trying to get to is, and this is how men can be better allies, is what can men do to try to better understand why this is such an important issue for women? And like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, because there's such a big disconnect for men because they don't get it. We don't get it.
I know, but
It's not the only thing we don't get.
So I don't know. You can try to talk with your partner about it. You can try to learn something, read some books, talk with some specialist, and I know that you can't fully understand because you're not a woman, but you can just trying to learn something and not believe in every foolish thing from the internet or from someone who have no idea what he's talking about. It's you have to look for information from reliable sources and from specialists, from your partner. You can talk about it a lot. And I don't know what else. Just support us and stop trying to be our enemy. It's not like nice decision for us too. It's not like something we like to do. It's really hard to make that decision for all of us.
Mhm. No, you're right. I mean, it sounds like we need to just listen more first and foremost, you know? And as you were saying, nowadays it's so easy to get information from wrong sources and wrong places, that we should be listening to the women who are speaking literally in the streets and protesting and hear and learn and listen more. Even if we think we know what a little bit, we should listen to your voices.
I would imagine, I mean, I feel like we're talking about confirmation bias right now, like people not expanding their news sources. I hate to use the word token, but like, do you have women that are just pretty much fighting against themselves and people against pro-choice are using those women as like these like you know what I'm trying to say, Julian?
Yes, like we talked about this. Yeah.
English.
Yeah, you should. When you talk, there is no language.
Talking Ryan over here.
No, so we had this discussion about this is happening in the States. And I think what Ryan's trying to say is that there might be like the Catholic Church might be like, take a couple of women and be like, why don't these women act like these perfect Catholic women who go by the church rules? Like, why aren't you guys doing? Because we were having a discussion with somebody where people will use, Ryan was using the word token, but taking one person and using this as like as a tool to justify. Well, I'm not making sense either. We'll
No,
take all
I
this.
know. I
Do you know what we're
get
trying to say?
you, but it's it's for me it doesn't have any sense because everyone is completely different individual, and not all women wants to be like someone, and also not all of men are like one of them, like and Poland is not also, not everyone in Poland is a Catholic. Not everyone have the same thinking, and for someone, some decisions are easier to make, or they just think with different. I forgot even this word in Polish. So
Join the club.
One language, can't even remember the word.
But it sounds like, and I guess what Ryan and I are both saying is that you might have a lot of different people that think differently. It doesn't matter. What matters is, like, if you don't want to do that, that's your choice. But if I want to do that, that's my choice, and you have to respect
yeah,
what we believe. Like,
that's
you can be Catholic and believe what you want to believe. If you're Catholic, that's fine. Same thing with Islam or Christianity. And that's where the separation of church and state is so important. Where
yeah,
it's
that's
not
right.
the church making those laws that determine it for everybody. You
Yeah,
know?
I have my free will, and I can get my own choices, and
Yeah.
I think that they just can't make me do something I don't want to, and I don't even have a words, because I'm so tired of this. It's like we have to fight all the time, and no one trying to understand us. It's so frustrating. I'm really tired.
We're probably not helping by asking stupid questions.
No, it's not like that. It's just
No, I know. You've been fighting the same battle for so long.
yeah. It
It
was
gets
like
very
4 years
tiring.
ago. 4 years ago, it was the same. In 2016, it was like the same. The black protests in Poland with umbrellas. We go to the streets. It wasn't that big like this one, but it was also about abortion. It's like the government trying to do the same in the middle of the pandemic. It's oh my
Yeah.
god.
For
I
them
don't
to
even have
pass
words.
that during a pandemic is like, why do that? Like, what?
Shady,
Very shady.
shady in
Yeah.
Polish.
Shady in Polish? Nie wiem. I'm useless. Useless Polish translator.
I don't know.
Sketchy as hell. That's the translation for Chicago.
Yes.
Man, you sus. That's another good one.
Yeah. And we can shift to a different topic a little bit. I guess the last question we kind of had was, what other women's rights or prawie kobiety are important in Poland?
Nie mówiłam już o tym?
Może? Troszkę. I know my mom's going to listen to this, so hi, Mom.
Yashimash.
God, she hates when you say that. No, she loves it, actually.
So, unfortunately, women in Poland have a very difficult situation, and constantly we have to fight for our rights. The government is trying to convince the society that the rule of a woman is to have children. This way of thinking is also promoted by Minister of Education Przemysław Czarnek. Women who do not want to have children are dehumanized in my country, and they're trying to make us believe that we will regret if we don't have any children, and that when we change our mind because we have to, it will be too late for us. Whether a woman wants to have children and start a family, and when she would like to do so, is her individual decision, and the state has no right to interfere in it. We have the right to make our own decisions, and we will fight for it. The problem in Poland is also in vitro treatment, which is criticized by Catholic Church, which has a huge impact on Polish society. Recently, in the town where I grew up, actions have been taken to bring an in vitro program there. And the priest wrote a letter to the mayor to stop the program because, in his opinion, the in vitro treatment leads to the killing of human lives, and a better solution would be to allocate the money to the church. And of course, this letter didn't affect to the decision of the mayor. And this whole situation made me laugh because it was so irrational. And about problems, there is problem of sex education in Poland, and it's also important for us. There is even a bill in parliament that deals with penalties for sex education, which is a normal subject in other European countries.
Penalties.
Yeah,
Oh shit. Okay.
yeah, it's not yet, but there is a bill in parliament. Young people in Poland have a problem with access to reliable knowledge about sex, contraception, and stuff like that. Usually they get it from the internet, but as you know, you can find a lot of untrue information there. In Poland, we learn about sex in the state classes called Education to Family Life, and the textbooks for this subject are an unfunny joke for me because these books focus on the Catholic approach, where it's about sex after marriage. You
Right.
don't talk even about how to use condoms, what they are, how to use them, that they protect against diseases, and masturbation is presented as a sin. And sex education in Poland is a big taboo subject, and the government and the church present it as something immoral and evil. And many parents believe this, and they are attracted that their 14-year-old child is learning about reproductive system and sex. But for me, everyone have the right to sexual knowledge, and it is perfectly natural. And yeah, at this point, the list of problems that could be raised is very long, and the ones I said are just the beginning. And I'm very sorry about what's happening in my country, and I hope that we can make a difference. Because we went out together to the streets, I think many people are slowly beginning to see the manipulation of the government and the church, of which there have been many in recent years. I very much hope that the Poles will become more open and will not allow further such behavior on the part of the authorities.
I think that is some of these stupidest shit, like from very like religious. We had that in the States here too, where they're very against abortion, but almost as against sexual education that would lead to lower amount of abortion.
Yeah,
It's so dumb.
it's
So like
it's like you have to
forehead our asses for
children.
Obviously, like increasing access for women's health care and sex education is a big part of like increasing that awareness. And as Ryan was saying, like if that's something you don't believe in, then you would want to increase sexual education, increase knowledge and use of condoms, contraceptives, and give women more access to healthcare. Because you also see this, where in the United States, for example, they cut off funding for these clinics that maybe perform these procedures, but then they cut off the funding. It's so irrational. It's so dumb. And it goes to everything you're talking about, where I feel like women are still on this constant fight, which must be really, really tiring on this super, super uphill battle.
Yeah, it is. It's really sad that they're doing this to us. It's so irrational. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And that's why I thought it was important to ask the question of that's why the separation of churches and state is so important, because a lot of people that believe this are usually coming, not always, but usually you see it coming from a religious type standpoint. And you
Yeah.
can't have the religion making the laws, because then you're going to come up with some crazy laws, not just pertaining to abortion, but all types of shit.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true.
tell me to eat meat on Friday. during Lent. The hell with you.
President Duda has recently changed his stance, stating that, in quotes, women should have the right to abort congenitally damaged fetuses. Is that enough from the president, in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, or not, stop. So, President Andrzej Duda didn't change his position because he is still against abortion, but he made a proposal that he called a compromise, although it is absolutely no compromise in it. The request submitted by the president included the possibility of terminating the pregnancy only in the case of lethal defects of the fetus, which means that all the children with serious genetic defects that prevent a decent life would have to be born and suffer anyway. And the president's proposal is misunderstanding, I think, because it's not a compromise. It's nothing, right? Moreover, it did not receive the support of either the society or political parties. In addition, it was very negatively received by pro-life circles as well as the Catholic Church. So, in my opinion, President Andrzej Duda did what he did is not enough. On the contrary, his decision didn't do any good.
Sounds like he's just trying to play politics.
Yeah, I think so. It's like do something, but it did nothing. It's like all these children are still have this genetics defects and other stuff, and it's a lot of them, and they will be suffering and dying anyway.
Right, absolutely. So it sounds like the president has not met the demands of the protesters. So does that mean that these protests will continue?
Yeah, it will. It will be a big protest on 11th.
Does the group have a link to a live stream so maybe people in the States can experience it firsthand live? See what you guys are going through and the fight you have to put up for your own rights.
Like I said, the people all around the world are protesting, and I think it's what's going on in Poland is not only here but everywhere. And
That's fair. I saw that there was either Kaczynski or what's his name? Duda was trying to use what's his name? Duda?
Duda, yeah.
He was practicing all week.
Not for Duda. Kaczynski, I actually pronounced that right the first try.
No, he did. I'm just giving him shit.
It was good.
Got it back. Look at that. I saw they were trying to use COVID to shut you guys down. You think they're gonna come down harder? Like as it gets colder, I can only assume cases are gonna go up. Do you think they're gonna make these demonstrations unlawful? And instead of instigating protesters to be counter protesters to you, do you have a fear that government itself is going to take action? It's a loaded question. I apologize.
The government is trying to make the lockdown in Poland completely lockdown. The protests are kind of illegal, and I think they have the hope that we will just stop because it will be colder. It will be this complete lockdown, and I think they just waiting for the protests to end. But I really hope that we have enough energy to keep going, and I have this energy. I'm going on the protests and I'm participating in it, and I hope that other people have this strength to go out, go to the streets, and don't stop screaming. Just to keep going and fighting for our freedom, because that's it. It's not only about abortion. It's about our rights, about our freedom, about
Mhm.
about our future. This is really important to not stop fighting.
Absolutely. And it seems that you guys have the momentum, like with, I mean, seriously, like Ryan and I were talking about, like these demonstrations look massive. So it seems that the government is probably just making people more angry without realizing it and just going to get more people.
Did you hear that in the propaganda media, in the television, they said that in the protests participate like 100 people? In
Oh,
Yeah, but it was few thousands people, not even few. It was like 150,000 people in Warsaw, and they still saying it was like, oh, it's only 100. And the other day they said that it was so many of us that because of us the COVID is more dangerous. So
mm,
they can't even decide that there is just a little a group of people, or that there's so many of us that we are dangerous. So they are lost by.
well, it's funny you say that because when we interviewed my mom used to work in Polish media, and literally what you're describing is what she was talking about this manipulation of media, where in Poland, there's not, like in the States, we're guilty of media manipulation as well, but it's not always from a government,
Yeah.
right? And that's a big difference. Like maybe the media is manipulating what the government's saying, but it's not the government manipulating what the media is saying. And that's a big difference. Ryan disagrees, but whatever.
Disagree. I think it goes both ways.
It does. You're right.
Yeah, probably it does, but some manipulations are so obvious that everyone can see that they are lying. Pretty easy to prove that they're lying because we have the photos, a lot of photos and videos from, for example, the drone. There were a lot of drones everywhere in every big city, so they can show very easily how many people participate in the protest, and it wasn't like 100. So
Yeah, I think
you know
anybody.
what I mean. It's really
Yeah,
stupid because I don't know. They think that no one will see that.
yeah,
They're
exactly.
lying. It's so obvious.
Sadly, people will believe what the news says. Like we're in the year 2020, and people still think some. I haven't met them, but there's people that think the Earth is still flat.
Yeah, that's
Nothing you
oh
can
my god.
inform these people.
That's why I really hope that people will start filtrating the news. You know, to not watch like one program, but also at different programs, and to talk with people who have different opinions, not being close in this, not being with only people who have the same way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
To
Absolutely. Well, I do not have any more questions. Ryan, did you have any more questions?
No, that Corona one was last one I had that I forgot I did have.
I'm really proud because you know I see these protesters everywhere, like in states, in Australia, in London, and
Yeah.
in Spain, everywhere. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of people standing with you guys in Poland. There's a lot of people, and that's why we wanted to interview you, just so that Americans who might not be hearing from Polish people actually there, that they get an opportunity to hear from a Polish person actually going through it. Because you're right, there's like this is an issue that women everywhere feel. The world is becoming slowly more progressive, I think, but there's still a long way to go. So there's a lot of people standing with you for sure. Okay, well, dziękujemy bardzo. Thank you so much. Thank you. No, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time out of busy schedule to do this interview with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, to say something.
Did you say November 11th was the next demonstration?
I think so. It was. I saw that news on the women's strike profile, so I think it will be the next big protest. I don't know how many people will be there because of this lockdown and new
Right.
restricts. So, but yeah, we plan to do the big manifestation. So.
And sorry, I think this is so for people listening, is there like a hashtag that's going around for these protests that if people
Yeah,
wanted to like take a photo?
the sign, right? Yeah, like
Yeah,
the red lightning, or in Polish piekło kobiet, czarny protest, like black protest, but I don't know if in America it's more like this protest like Black Lives Matter, I think. So
right.
it's czarny protest.
We'll put the hashtags in the description if people want to like make
Yeah.
a sign. Charlie protest.
Piekło kobiet. I think this women's strike kobiet. I think these three are the most important.
Got it. So thank you so much, Ania, for joining the podcast. We really appreciate it. And we hope that things go well. We'll be following closely and what's happening in Poland. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
If there's anything that comes out in the next couple weeks, feel free to forward us any articles or videos. We'll do our best to shed some more light on it in our future episodes. Or hell, we'll have you back in a month, see how everything's going.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank
Thank
you. So bye.
Goodbye. I don't know how to say it in Polish.
Do widzenia.
Do widzenia.
Yashimash. That's all,
Okay. That's also cool.
This is a public service announcement for all social media scientists. Your thoughts on the pandemic have been incredibly helpful, and honestly, I wouldn't have survived this long without your opinions on the situation. Thank you for your support and cooperation. Please follow all the necessary guidelines. Go fuck yourself.
Royal Raven Music.
Tell me what happened to society. Glorify memes and dumb notoriety. Social media piety. Bask in negativity righteously.